guys, it's me, Ruowen Huang. Before I start, let me introduce myself first, otherwise I'll always forget. My name is Ruowen Huang. I'm an author, spirit coach, and also a psychic. This week, we're going to talk about various lessons through reincarnation, which I cannot cover all area, but I'm going to pick up a couple, a big one, like it obviously apply to everyone, and then we would discuss that. The reason why I discuss that is later on you'll realize by understanding this, is not only going to apply to yourself, it will also help you to understand what other people are going through and what tests they're going through, or you will even able to spot it from, the record, history record and things like that. It would help you better to identify those elements. Therefore, you would help you to seek what truth really is. So you mean what I try to say is if someone who is recording history or recording certain like Bible knowledge or things like that, if they personally are dealing with power struggle or various tests that I'm dealing with, that I'm going to talk about this week, you will be able to spot them. By removing them, you will be able to really see what the true is. So anyway, today we're going to talk about one of the main lessons that I discovered in through reincarnation, and that is called vulnerability. Yesterday we talked about many of us would go through life being a very powerful person, no matter what that position is. So the power is usually what trigger the greed to make you feel you are above everyone, right? Because of that is what I call dangerous zone. We sometimes become very disregard of other life or disregard of things, right? So it's really fine line. Like every lesson you're going through actually have really fine line for you to cross, right? So you will always have to bring yourself back and remind you like that what lesson you are in, or continue having that internal struggle. For me, I feel power struggle is the biggest lesson for us to confront ourselves, to continue to remind ourselves not to be greedy, not to be disrespectful, and still understand what is that big rule under the universe. So most of us, if you've gone through that, the next task like you will most likely go through is called vulnerability. As you can see, it's very hard for me to pronounce it. But the reason of that is if you understand to respect the universe, right, that everybody exists for a reason and you only take what you need and you don't, indulge it or overtook it and things like that. If you understand that basic look, how the universe function, you will come to this point, understand like no one can exist alone. That means I cannot survive all by myself. Hope that the concept is easy for you to understand. So in order to be understanding, okay, I understand you exist for a reason, but then I also understand I cannot exist myself. That means I had to find a way to coexist or work with other living things, right? Then you were putting into a position that make you very vulnerable. The reason of that is only when people are in this very vulnerable situation, they will reach out for help. You know what I mean? By reaching out, it force yourself to get out of your comfort zone and reach out, ask for help or look for help or things like that. It's through that process then you start finding connection with people, connection with the universe. By seeking for help, asking for help, you come to a point you also would get you to think about what it is I have that I can contribute back. You know what I mean? So it's not just continuously asking for help. This lesson is especially important is because this is a lesson that actually got you connected, reconnecting with the universe. If I say power struggle is for you to figure out who you are, where you stand, vulnerability is pretty much got you reconnected with the universe. But the reason I said this lesson is especially important is a lot of people got messed up in this lesson. And then they might take several lives, and still couldn't figure out why. The reason is when we were putting in a very vulnerable situation, we tend to belittle ourselves. That is, many of us, yes, we've been very powerful people before, but we also been very poor, very vulnerable people before. That can be homeless, that can be, beggar on the street, or that can be, people who have nothing, right? So the reason I say this particular lesson tend to mess up a lot of soul, not really messing up. It's just I think we're focusing on different direction. When we're putting in such a vulnerable status, we tend to belittle ourselves in a way, start thinking we are not good enough. I'm no good. Nobody wants me. This is where all the dirty little things start surfacing out, and then require soul to look deeply and work individually. You know what I mean? So, if you end up having nothing, instead of seeking for help or thinking about what I can do could contribute, right? Most of people fall into the story of I am not good enough. Nobody wants me. Nobody loves me. So this kind of setting, instead of working it, they allow this kind of setting to become their own domain. That means I speak this, right? I'm useless, or I'm nobody love, or things like that. Because they use that as their own domain, as you can see, the lesson now is got, diverted to complete different way. You know what I mean? So in this vulnerability lesson, you were supposed to reconnect with the universe, figure out what it is that you can offer, and then reach out for help. You know what I mean? Because no one can survive in this universe alone, right? But then a lot of people forget that's the direction they should go. Instead, they create a brand new track called I am not good enough. And then they allow this domain to speak who they are for many life. And then it becomes tougher and tougher task to work on, right? So a lot of time when you're talking to people, even you already several lives pass, right? You would realize you're often trapped in this very vulnerable status, right? People who is independent, people who is resistant to asking for help, they often in this struggle don't know what to do. And then they fall into their dark hole, or they fall into their story like, nobody wants me. I'm all alone. Okay, I really hope by introducing little by little, you will start to see the bigger picture that I've been trying to explain, right? Nobody is alone in this universe, really, nobody. Even when you think you are alone, you are not alone. You are simply being put in a very vulnerable situation, and then this is a time for you to reflect yourself and thinking about what it is I am. Not to put yourself in the dark hole and believe that I am no good, I'm, nobody loving, all that. But really reflect yourself and thinking, I feel vulnerable, right? And accept being vulnerable, because that's just part of the universe, right? That's just part of being. So when you are in this status, what do? Who can I ask for help, right? Because what you're supposed to do is step out and reconnect with the world. Find a way to reconnect with the world. Find a way to reach out for help. Find a way to see what it is that you can contribute back by asking for help. You know what I mean? But don't put yourself in a different route that is, I am not good enough. And allow such a strong word to become your own domain, and then become a harder task to work on as a life move on. But anyway, as I say, I think power struggle is a very important task, which many of us is still struggling sometimes. But I also see vulnerability is also another very important task that many of us are still working on nowadays. I'm not just saying you. I mean, me myself will have difficulty with that too. But then, as I say, any task in life, it takes you to continue confronting it, continue stepping out of your comfort zone little by little. Eventually, those tasks will no longer become your tasks. Those lessons will no longer become your lesson. You know what I mean? How do you test it? It's when you realize it no longer bothers you as much. You know what I mean? So, as I say, this week we're gonna talk about various things that big lesson actually. I'm gonna talk about big lesson that happen through reincarnation that may or may not sometimes get us confused, and then don't know what it is really that we are learning. So yesterday we talked about power struggle. Today we talk about vulnerability. So remember, again, let me remind you again, if you've ever been put in the situation that you feel vulnerable, don't go to the dark hole and believing I'm not good enough. It's important for you to self-reflect, but it's not what you should do to give yourself a bad domain that you carry on for life. Okay, so what you understand is when you're putting into a vulnerable situation, what you are supposed to do is reconnect with the world. You have to think what it is or what you can do to reconnect with the world, because accepting help is also a part of the lesson we saw we're supposed to learn. Right? Because no one can exist in this universe alone and alone only. So anyway, I hope that give you guys a little bit thought and then get you to think about it. So again, if you like what I'm doing, you can always join me live on Facebook, or go to subscribe my YouTube channel, or go to my website, ruowen.com. Till then, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.